Hello, everybody. Happy Earth Day Eve. Hello and welcome to Iowa IPL's almost annual Earth Day Eve event. On behalf of Iowa IPL staff and board, I am so excited to welcome you today. For those of you we have not met, my name is Irene Damaris, and I am Iowa IPL's executive director. A few things to note before we open with a reflection. We're using a Zoom webinar today, so that means you will not have audio or video. If you have any questions during the Q&A time, please write your questions in the Q&A little box that you can click located at the bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen or in the chat. We're also live streaming to Iowa IPL's Facebook page. So if for some reason you get kicked off, you can go there and catch the event. We are also recording this, so we will share it on our YouTube channel later next week. So any general questions can be answered in the chat box as well. I would love to invite you to join me in a time of reflection. This piece is called We Hold the Earth. We hold our siblings who suffer from the storms and droughts intensified by climate change. We hold all species that suffer. We hold world leaders delegated to make decisions for life. We pray that the web of life may be mended through courageous actions to limit carbon emissions. We pray for right actions for adaptation and mitigation to help our already suffering Earth community. We pray that love and wisdom may inspire our actions as communities so that we may, with integrity, look in the eye of our siblings and all beings and truthfully say, we are doing our part to care for them and the future of our children. May love transform us and all of our world with new steps towards life. Thank you. For those of you who are just getting to know our organization, Iowa IPL is the state faith group that works on climate action in Iowa. We invite Iowans of faith and conscience to take bold and just action on the climate crisis. And we do this through our 4 focus areas called climate action, faith, farms, and climate, advocacy, teaching, and preaching. Iowa IPL does a lot of coalition work, including being a member of Clean Up Mid-Am, a coalition to keep Mid-Am Energy accountable and asking them for a public plan to close its Iowa coal plants by 2030. This is vital so that the communities in which the coal plants operate have time and support to transition into clean energy and create new jobs in those communities. We're invested in a just transition as we move into a green economy, and that's why this is important. We're also a part of the Blue-Green Alliance of Iowa, where green environmental groups like Iowa IPL get together with Blue Union groups to work together towards clean energy goals and just to make sure lines of communication are open. This is especially important with just transition and from the building of utility-based solar projects to EV charging stations. We want these new green jobs to be union jobs that truly support everyone who is building our green energy new world. When given the chance to screen Current Revolution, this documentary series, we jumped at the chance as it aligns so much with the work that we're already doing. And we're thrilled to put together a panel that amplifies the work of just transition going on in our state. If you haven't had time to screen the documentary series, no worries, the panel is still for you. Just make sure to watch it later this weekend. So I'd like to get to our panel and invite our panelists to join me. I'm going to introduce everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce my friend Charlie. Charlie Wishman is currently the president of the Iowa Federation of Labor. Let me get this right, AFL-CIO. I could do church acronyms, union, I'm still learning. He's a member of the AFT Local 716 and has also previously been a member of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, as well as the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal employees. Charlie has worked tirelessly this legislative session and especially this week, and we're really lucky that he could join us today and tonight. Bree Halverson is the Midwest Field Director for the Blue Green Alliance. Bree started her career at the St. Paul Regional Labor Federation, where she worked for 10 years. As the political director at the St. Paul Regional Labor Federation, Bree advocated for people at work by working on political and community policy campaigns. Right before joining the Blue Green Alliance, Bree was the state director for Working America in Minnesota for 4 years. Bree helps lead our new Blue Green Alliance in Iowa and is pretty awesome and writes great emails. And last but not least, Rob Hogue is a former Iowa IPL board member and is a member and tuning in today from Christ Episcopal Church in Cedar Rapids. He's currently the co-chair of the Citizens Climate Lobby Episcopal Action Team and served in 2021 as a member of the delegation to the World Climate Negotiations, so COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland, for the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church. Rob retired from the state house in 2022 after 20 years there of service. Rob continues to take faith-rooted climate action every day, and we're so blessed to have him as a friend of Iowa IPL. So now to the questions, and I'll ask the question and just have you respond in whatever order you see fit. So, faith organization, first question. What does your religion, your faith, or your own ethical beliefs say about responsibility towards workers and frontline community members who are at risk of being left behind in the transition to a clean energy economy?
Well, Irene, I'll jump in with that really quick. I think this is something that's not true in just the Episcopal Church or for Christians in general. I think it's an interfaith view that all religions really have a stewardship call, and there's a call to take care of other people. And when you look at the environmental injustices that are being done to Indigenous people or people of color or low-income communities or working family neighborhoods, that's a real problem. And in terms of just transition, I think we need to be crystal clear that it's not the workers' fault, right? To the extent that we're in a situation today where we need change and we urgently need change to effectively deal with climate change, it's not the workers' fault. Not only are they doing the work that their employers have hired them to do, but in many ways, if you think about like the coal industry, that's workers that were doing things that our country, in large part, I'm not saying everybody in the country, but in large part, our country wanted done. And so I think we just have to approach this in a way that is not the workers' fault. And we've got to have a just transition, and we've got to deal with the longstanding environmental injustices that people have experienced.
Thank you.
I guess I'll take a shot at this. How does my faith inform just transition? I guess reminds me of a few years ago when for some reason I decided to approach the family leader and say, well, why is it that you only why do you only concentrate on a certain set of issues? Because if you actually read the gospel, Jesus has a lot to say about economics. The entire Bible has a lot to say about economics and treating workers right, and so on. And I could go more and more into that. But there is a lot to be said in the Gospels um, about treating workers the right way. And not just that, about income inequality, about there's a whole lot about environmental stewardship. We could go on and on and on. And I appreciate things like IPL, groups like IPL, because you actually take, you don't just focus on a very, very narrow set of divisive issues. You're trying to push, you use faith in a way that actually pushes what I think most faith traditions are all about, which is ultimately about justice and trying to make the world a better place for the next generation, whatever that is. So not trying to trash on the family leader. That is a little bit too easy for me, but like I do really appreciate what IPL does.
Thank you.
I guess I'll wrap us up. So I am a huge fan of Mr. Rogers, who's a Presbyterian minister, and that's church I grew up in. So and I guess I feel like the world would just be a better place if we all just sort of listen to Mr. Rogers. And I feel like just transition is just really in that vein, and not to be simplistic, but it means taking care of your neighbor. It means just what Rob said, right? Which is like thinking about how the workers are and the communities that these plants are in are made whole. And I think as we talk about this throughout this webinar, like that is what we need to do, and it takes a while. And so I appreciate, just like Charlie said, I appreciate you, Irene, and your staff, and like thinking about how people can come to this conversation with open ears and open hearts and open minds, because that's what it's going to take to get this done. So thanks.
And that kind of actually goes into our next question. So we are using a lot of terminology like clean energy. What does just transition? What is that? So our next question simply is, what does a just clean energy transition mean and look like to you? Because you might want to flesh out that term for folk.
I may have a different perspective than folks on this. The more and more I look into this, I don't know that just transition actually means anything to me. And the reason why I say that is because I don't know. Look, in capitalism, there's going to be winners and losers always. And as long as we have the system we have, someone is going to be treated unjustly in a transition. So as much as possible, I don't even really like to use the words just transition, because I don't know that in the end, making this transition, that everyone is going to be treated justly. The goal here, though, is to make it as just as possible for everybody. And I think that includes not just when you shut down a coal plant, or you shut down whatever thing that is difficult for workers to deal with, or communities to deal with. Transition also applies to how workers are treated on the job. And one of the things I think that brought actually our coalition together at the very start was that those of us in the labor community hadn't begun to notice that on a lot of solar projects, workers were being treated very, very poorly. And there was wage theft going on. There was things like you had temps just weren't walking off the job. You had not great safety standards. And so that was kind of the, so a few years ago, Rob and I and a bunch of other people tried to put together a blue-green alliance, and it just wasn't the right time. But as these things started to pop up and we had something to say about it, and that was like, hey, let's make these jobs as good as possible. Just because you're working on a environmental project doesn't mean that like feeling good about saving the environment and saving the world does not pay the bills, does not like actually pay your mortgage. It does not give you a secure retirement. It does not give you good benefits. And so that's why and I really appreciate IPL having the position and Irene stating, we want these to be union jobs. And it's not just union jobs because we're in a coalition together. It's because union jobs provide benefits, good pay, a retirement. And, so I guess when we're talking about transition, it's so much larger than what you think of when you hear, sound bites on the news or whatever. And sometimes I just feel like the words just transition is putting a happy face on a really, really difficult situation. And so I guess it's as just as possible transition is probably more about how I think about it.
I don't know if you want anybody else to say, but I'm listening to this audiobook from a linguist that's talking about just sort of like different words and different paths within the English language, which is fascinating. I think things change over time. I think just transition started out as a term that people who were seeing sort of how our economy was changing and how we were actually thinking about our energy production wanted to start to draw attention rightly to sort of who could get these new jobs, who were going to lose the jobs that we were going away from. And I think as sort of like things happen, it became a placeholder for sort of that. And so I think Charlie's right about thinking about that this is something that signals that people want to have a conversation about this, and that we really do need to think about how to create a campaign and organize, right? And organize, like we all know, all these people on this call know how to do, and on this panel know how to do, and think about like, how do we line up the policies? How do we move the right things that are going to fit that community? Because I think as sort of we think about a coal plant, or we think about other industries that are going to go through transition as we maybe switch from EVs and things like that, like how sort of like communities can benefit from that, and not just sort of like this, what we do in America, which is shift from industry to industry. And so, and it's going to be different from community to community. And we really need to think about like what those communities need, and what those workers need, and doing that work. And it's multi-year. And so it's like putting together a group of people who are going to be in it for the long haul. And that's what just transition means to me.
I really agree with Charlie and Bree and what they've said here. I just a couple thoughts just to add. One is it really is about a community and a sense of community versus what I see as just a growing sense of greed and related in income inequality that I don't think it's possible for most people to even conceive of how of how disproportionate and unequal income and wealth in this country have become. So I do, you know, I like what Charlie said about it's a goal, it's a way of making sure that things are taken into consideration that need to be considered. And a more just transition is better than a less just transition. I will say one other thing. The other thing to add is that it has to be effective. The harm being done from climate change and other environmental ills in our world is growing. The harm is growing rapidly. It is disproportionately affecting indigenous people, people of color, low-income people, working family neighborhoods. You see that in Cedar Rapids with the floods and other things that have happened here. You see it around the world clearly, and so it does. We can't say, well, in order to keep the entrenched interests being able to make more money off the current model, that we're just going to continue that because we need to have those jobs there. That doesn't work because the harm gets worse and worse. So what we do has to be effective. And one final point, even though I've emphasized now a couple times the disproportionality of the impact, I like to remind some other people that nobody is so wealthy that they are immune from the health and ecological consequences of climate change. Cancer kills people who are rich. Disasters kill people who are rich. And this is why we have to find a way to come together with a new social compact or community understanding that we're going to effectively deal with this problem. And we're to the best of our ability, Charlie, we're going to not leave people behind.
Thank you all for that. And I agree, just language and how we phrase things matter. And as many people as we can invite in and bring with us is most important. So our next question is, and we've kind of mentioned some of these, what are some of the obstacles to promoting as just as can be energy transition in the US?
I'll kick this one off. I'll say one of the biggest obstacles, I'll say, and thinking about a just transition is lack of time. And so having the ability to know something is coming with a longer runway of time is the most helpful. Just like I said earlier, right? These are complex issues, and even though there are some themes that can be helpful, it really tends to be different from different communities. So how much tax revenue does this company pay into the community, right? And what are the solutions to be able to fix those? How many workers are there? How many of them are close to retirement, or how many of them are just starting their careers, right? Those are two very different solutions that you need depending on that workforce, right? Is this the major employer in the county, or is it not? And that's also creates different solutions that you need. And all of these are in of themselves complex to solve. And so if you can figure out when sort of like companies are thinking about shifting their business model and, you know, not producing energy through coal, the better. To be able to like organize to do that. That's not to say that if you find out in 2 weeks that something is shutting down, there aren't things that you can't do, but I would say the biggest obstacle is time.
I'll go next. This requires governmental action on a huge level. And our government is owned by corporations. And corporations do not care about workers. Corporations do not care about your communities. corporations do not care about anything but profit and shareholder profit. Give you a quick example. So being engaged in this work, I won't name the utility, but I was talking to one of the utilities came to us for help on some legislation. And I said, before we're going to support you on this kind of thing, can you just tell me the person who is in charge of your I use the term just transition, like who's in charge of your just transition? Can you have them give me a call? And oh yeah, I know the guy, absolutely sure he'll be right in touch with you. Never got that phone call. And then like just a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, hey, Ted, the guy I was talking to, I'm like, I never got that phone call from your companies that you represent, your just transition person, because I really would like to know what the company is thinking and cares about just transition. What does that mean to the company? Oh yeah, sure, we'll have them call you, right? We want to be on the same page, and all. Still waiting for my phone to ring to have that conversation, to even know what the company thinks or cares about just transition. And so in light of that, the fact that, at least in my view, corporations do not care about you, do not care about the company, or do not care about your communities, and do not care about their workforce other than keeping them alive and paying them as low as possible. That means that we need to take things into our own hands. And that is exactly what Bree was talking about, which is community organizing. And it's putting workers and first, and putting communities that are affected unjustly by environmental hazards first. It involving the entire community, because when changes and shifts happen on the scales that we're talking about, it requires everyone to be a part of the community, to be a part of the conversation, not just the company dictating what's going on.
I'm going to add here. First of all, it's always a pleasure to be on a panel with the president of the Iowa Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO, Charlie Wishman, because he is a straight talker and puts a fine point on some things, and it's refreshing for me to hear that kind of direct communication. A couple of complications here. Bree captured it well with the time issue. On climate change, our backs are getting against the wall. It is time to act. We could have acted 25 years ago more significantly as a world, but we didn't. We've been patient. There have been groups, entrenched interests, that have been actively trying to delay and deny, and that's been a problem. So that is an added challenge. In the movie, The Current Revolution, for those who are able to watch it, they make considerable effort to have people who might otherwise be perceived as, or want to be perceived as, politically conservative, extolling the virtues of a clean energy transition. And that's interesting to see, because this has become highly divided, the issue. And one of the things that's been very disappointing for me to see is there is an element where I believe people in authority, and there's actually a reference in the movie to everybody in Arizona likes solar, but some of the politicians have to oppose solar, right? And we now live in a world where sometimes I believe people are acting in order to trigger reaction from other people. They don't act because they really necessarily want to act, or they think that's the most important thing to do. They're trying to trigger reaction because division is good for them. And so the organizing that Bree and Charlie talk about, part of that is the really hard, long process of connecting with people. And I know Iowa IPL has been doing that, especially with the farm and climate program, some really deep organizing, and it's one of the great, it's one of the reasons why I support a group like Iowa IPL, so that we can do more deep organizing. But we need a lot of that across Iowa, a lot of deep organizing to counteract the really easy and cheap actions that are intended to trigger reaction. And by the way, there are things done that you have to react to, right? We don't live in an era anymore where people can sit by silently and sacrifice other people, right? So people have to speak up. And we need to do that, but that kind of politics that people are doing, where they're doing negative things to provoke reactions, it's really bad for our state and our country.
And it definitely makes the work harder for all of us. Not harder, more challenging, but you know, Iowans and groups, our supporters and people here today, we're up to the challenge. That's why we're here to take climate action that's meaningful. I'm going to jump to a question. So for half a century, because coal is kind of something we've been thinking about a lot, coal has been the cheapest way to reliably provide energy. So while America is making our shift to clean energy, it's important that we manage that this transition is as just as possible and as sustainable. So what are some key ways that we can attain this goal? Yeah, we're gonna have to rename our subgroup Charlie and Blue Green Alliance.
I'll just jump in really quick here, because in the movie, it may have been cheap, but one of the things that's very clear is that the coal in the Navajo Nation, where it was mined and where it was burned, didn't really benefit the Navajo Nation. And then there were costs associated with it that people experienced, health costs or transmission line costs, that hurt neighborhoods or whatever, that nobody paid for, but it was there and it happened. And now you have in this movie this clean energy revolution that has solar panels on every home in neighborhoods in Arizona and electric vehicles being charged there, and it's working. And Irene, you used a word, cheap. Well, maybe it was cheap, but it wasn't low cost. And this new era is truly low cost. There was another person in the movie who said, what's not to like about solar power? The sun is free. Once you build it, the sun is free. And then of course there's the battery storage that's getting better and better. And the movie recounted some of that. So, I hate it when people say, like polls ask a question, how much more a month are you willing to pay to act on climate change? And the question should be, how much money do you want to save while you act on climate change? Because the solutions actually save money. That doesn't address the transition and the workers. We've got to build that in. We've got to make sure that there are, alternatives and jobs. And I remember talking to one political leader here in Iowa on a campaign visit, I think this was in 2016, who was talking about all the solar energy development programs in Eastern Kentucky in the heart of the coal, the heart of the coal mining area. And that's what the kids wanted to do. The kids were excited about engaging in this clean energy for the future. And I think there's so much potential here, and we've got to handle it to be as just as possible.
I agree. The kids do want to do this. They do want to build the green, have green jobs in the future. And I know that, our siblings in the construction trades are, talking about that as a way to talk to people about registered apprenticeship. And I think like what struck me when I watched the films and when we talked about the Navajo Nation and some of the workers that were promised jobs and got jobs, and then, they shut down the plant, and what do we do? I think like that was a really poignant story, because that is a story that happens in just about every community, not just the Navajo Nation. And so I think that we need to think about like how we make sure that the unions are engaged right away to get people into careers. So solar panel installing is great, but it's like a lot of construction, right? It has a season, it has a moment. And so making sure that people are using solar installing to get into, a construction career is really great, because that means when maybe solar panels are, not sort of something that people are putting up in that market at that time, they can go do something else in this clean energy economy as well. And thinking about how that is diverse from heat pumps and, geothermal and district energy systems, and what does that look like? And, Blue Green Alliance nationally is really very proud of the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as the Infrastructure and Jobs Act that we have, which is federal money. And it really helps us think about multiple types of industry, because someone may be excited to install solar panels, someone may not. And so making sure we're thinking about how communities are attracting diverse types of economic development is going to be really helpful in this transition, and making sure that those battery storage that are really necessary for utility scale solar, we're also thinking about how we're making those here as well. Iowa has a rich manufacturing tradition, still has a lot of manufacturing, and it has the ability to also be part of this green clean energy revolution as well. And so making sure that Iowans know about that and have access to that, and can add that into the mix is really helpful.
I think Rob and Bree did a very good job of saying a lot of the things I would say. So just, I guess, a little bit riffing off of that, though, slightly off the question, but it really matters how we talk about these things. One of the first things that jumped out to me in the movie was like, I liked the entire, all three of them, right? But when the guy said, who I believe happened to be like a BP, former BP executive, right? And he says, it is a simple fact that your job will go away if you are involved in these industry. Like, that is going to shut people off and be your enemy right away. So like, don't talk like that, please. That's really bad. When we're talking about the Navajo Nation segment, one of the parts that really stuck out to me was there was a lot of that actually that really resonated with me on so many levels. One of the ones that really did, though, is the man who has to drive from the Navajo Nation to LA to find work as an iron worker. That's a long ways. And travelers it's not uncommon in construction. So like but that is what he's doing now, right? And especially a lot of people who want to do good, and want to do good for workers, and want to do good for the environment, which I think it's really stupid that we put ourselves in these silos of like blue and green, right? But you can't just say stuff like, oh, well, there's just so many more green jobs, and it's not it's not an apples to apples transition as far as skill sets and things like that. And you can't tell some somebody who's like close to retirement, well, just go to the community college and learn coding. Like we have to talk about this stuff better, or you're going to instantly turn people off and fall into the divisive sort of like rhetoric and stuff that Rob was talking about. And if they're, look, I mean, like just recently, and I'm not going to talk about the whole conversation, but like it was a really good conversation that Bree and I and the University of Iowa Labor Center had with the 3 largest utility locals in the state, and they all said like, we want a better future for our kids. Like they get it. It's not that. But when you start with certain kinds of language that, when you approach people with certain kinds of language that it turns people off. So I'm just saying we need to be very careful about how we talk about things, because in the end, we all actually really want the same thing, but in the times that we live in, political rhetoric just shuts people down.
Always invite in and bring along. I'm going to be a broken record with that. I'm going to jump to a question. So how can a congregation or a faith community, what can they do or start doing to help advance the clean energy transition?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one, Irene, because that's a really important question. And one of the mantras that I'm trying to learn is you're not going to solve climate change by yourself, and you're also not going to solve climate change by doing nothing, right? It calls for engagement, and you need to be engaged with other people. And one of the great ways to be involved is with people who are in your faith community. Because as I indicated at the outset, we all, regardless of what faith community it is, we all have a calling to care for our neighbors and to exercise environmental stewardship and to take care of future generations. So here's my short list. Talk about it and study together, right? Convene the group, be together, do something together, and then you're going to want to assess your own buildings and grounds. And I know IPL has had programs on that. On Sunday, I'm helping organize a discussion about solar power at Prairie Woods at 1:30 in the afternoon for houses of worship and nonprofits. So have that discussion. If you have assets, investments, assess those. Investments have impact. Make sure you're investing in a way where your finance is following your values. And then finally, do advocacy together in some way. One of the easiest things to do is for a congregation to join IPL. I mean, that's a very easy way to get connected to that. I'll say one other thing, just based on this conversation, that invite the public in, right? We talk about the political divisions, and those show up in congregations, and different people. Just the way our society is stratified, our congregations are becoming stratified in many ways. So continue to look for ways to overcome those divisions and do that through a congregation as well. But those big things, talk about it, study it. Assess your grounds, do something. You don't let perfect be the enemy of doing good and making progress. Do something, build on it, and then finally advocate together, because ultimately, like Charlie said it earlier today, it comes down to good public policy and governmental action that you have to have if you're going to effectively solve climate change and do it in a way that's as just as possible.
I'll go next, unless you were going to go, Bree. These workers are part of your congregations. Like, yeah, we always get tagged like, oh boy, the thugs, right? Yeah, we are the ones holding the baseball bats, teaching your kids to play little league. Like I mean, we're just regular people, right? We're part of your congregations, and I don't know, talk to people and like listen. Don't not, the pun was not supposed to be intended, but don't preach at people, right? Listen to what it is that maybe they would like to see because they are a part of not just your congregation, they're a part of your community that your congregation is a part of. They don't want to see their community, including the congregation, go down in flames. That's not what they want. And so listen to them. And then when it does come time for a transition, like, your congregation needs to be a part of that coalition, that community conversation that's happening. Because I believe that the faith perspective is a very, very incredibly important one to have included in these conversations. So I don't know, I got a lot of thoughts on this, but like, and yeah, sure, of course, make your grounds, make everything as environmentally possible, as good as possible. But when it comes to the actual like work to be done, your church doesn't sit outside the community, it sits within the community. And so you don't just like, you are called on and required to be a part of the conversation.
I'll agree with Charlie. I'll say something very similar, but also like, they're part of your community, they're part of your church. I'll just also say, this is hard, right? So if someone is facing losing their job, their career, and they don't know what they're going to do because it's been hard to articulate where you go next, that's scary. And you know, congregations and church people are good at helping, right? And they're losing more than also their job. Like, losing your union is also hard, right? That's your family. Those are people that you rely on. And in industries like this, these are people you rely on for life and death. And so you get really close. And that sort of closeness happens in a congregation, right? So you understand what they're feeling and you will be able to help them through that. And I think that that is also just an important human component that is just something unique that congregations bring to the table in this hard organizing.
Thank you. We're gonna pop into some questions from the audience. I have a question from Steve. How can we also take into account international justice issues? For example, better batteries are great, but perhaps not if mining precious metals hurts native people of another country, like in Sudan.
Well, I'll take a shot at that one, and it's a very important issue. To me, this is why the efforts to bring more manufacturing back to the United States, Buy American, are really important initiatives, because that is those are ways that you can make sure that, or I shouldn't say it that way. That's way, at least possibly, we could make sure that things are done in an environmentally sustainable way in terms of resource development, because too often it hasn't been done sustainably here. And so that's one thing. Second, and I'm not an expert on this. Charlie or Bree may know it better, but I think about like the fair trade organizations and the groups that are trying to work globally to ensure fair conditions for workers. It's one of the reasons why supporting unions is important, because they do have an international footprint. And so I think that is another place that we should go with that. I do want to say, I do just want to say one other thing though. Too often, this becomes the meme that is used to say, see, this is why we shouldn't do clean energy. And when I see that, I just am like, well, the harm from the coal industry in terms of toxic metals is enormous. And it, you know, it just calls out for, yeah, we need to make this transition. We need clean energy sources. And of course, this is why we should use energy efficiently and conserve and have more sustainable lives, right? And don't try to entertain the lifestyle of the rich and the famous for the greediest among us. I mean, we need people to exercise responsible stewardship, and we can't, you can't, not everybody's going to live that kind of Elon Musk is out of control. Somebody's got to get that guy under control, right? I mean, it's just the amount of resources being consumed there are just extraordinary. Thank you.
I think that it's pretty spot on. So I don't have really anything else to add.
I think the next question is probably a good one that definitely and Charlie can answer. Again, from Steve. Great question, Steve. Are similar workforce transitions happening in West Virginia, Texas, New Mexico, where coal and oil is focused in the local economies?
Irene,
Yeah.
your question cut out on my Zoom. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. And now there's sirens going by me. Downtown Des Moines. Are similar workforce transitions happening in West Virginia, Texas, New Mexico, other states that are coal, oil focused local economies?
That's a better question for Bree.
Yes, there are transitions happening in almost every state, right? Whether it's a coal plant or mining. West Virginia has been looking at this in a regional way with Kentucky and Tennessee and parts of Ohio and Appalachia to think about how that region can transition well. And so there's been interesting models there around sort of revitalizing Appalachia. I would say the model that we're the most proud of from Blue Green Alliance is my colleague Chris Murkison in Colorado worked with the Colorado AFL-CIO to set up an office of just transition in Colorado to actually have economic development professionals within their economic development department focusing on what is going to be needed in communities around coal transition. And they had a situation in Pueblo, Colorado, where they had a mine as well as a coal plant, and that was facing closure. And so that's really what helped create a lot of state policies that we've been using in other states across the country as we're thinking about what's the best for workers. And they're now even going back to make sure that they are continually thinking about how that office can do better and just put a survey into the field of workers to get a better understanding of demographics and needs and things like that. And so hopefully we'll have more information, updated information here soon that might be helpful to share out.
Always love sharing information that the Blue Green Alliance has. So we're running out of time for the rest of the questions, but it wouldn't be an Iowa IPL event if we didn't end on a high and hopeful note. So it only has to be a sentence, but I want to end on this. What gives you hope in this work?
I thought this thing would have fallen apart by now, like a long time ago, based on Rob and I's experience from a few years ago, because just like one person saying the wrong thing gets people into their corners, and the timing's right and the people are right, and we have made a difference and it matters. So we will keep it up as long as you do.
I think the thing that gives me the most hope right now, they're sort of twofold, really quick. One is these clean renewable energy solutions are working, and people can see them working, and they save money and they help the environment. And as Charlie pointed out, there have been some exceptions, but in general, they work for workers as well. Right. I mean, and I appreciate him pointing out the problems that had been there, but it does work. And then the other thing is, I just feel a little bit, I'm starting to feel a resurgence in citizen advocacy. It's been difficult. You know, the politics in this country have gotten had gotten relatively toxic. And then we had the pandemic. But I'm hopeful as we head into 2024 that we may be turning a corner on that. And fingers crossed, there are lots of good people engaged. And we need more of them. We need more people engaged.
What gives me hope is young people, like the Gen Z generation is pretty rad, and I really think they're gonna like push us in a really cool direction, because not only do they want change and they want change now, but they really want it to be union, right? They're organizing unions at Starbucks, and they're organizing unions all over the place. And so I know that'll be part of their clean energy future, and I know that they're going to go into the different universities and different jobs, and they're going to advance this technology to a place that we don't know where it could go. And I think they're the people, they're going to make Star Trek a reality for us. So I'm pretty excited. So.
Well, thank you so much. That's the time we have for questions. We'll have a little bit next steps, but I just want, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you three for joining us tonight for this Earth Day Eve. You're three people that I truly admire and respect. And when you all said yes so quickly to emails, it was just thrilling for us, because we would just so appreciate and want to amplify the work that you all are doing. You're all amazing, and you're making the world a better place. So that said, Iowa IPL has a lot of exciting things going on over the next few months, and I'm going to have my staff pop on and talk about events and actions and how you can get involved. So our awesome staff, they'll introduce themselves, so I'm really excited for y'all to meet them.
Well, hey everyone, I'll start with that. Again, I'm MJ, Iowa IPL's Advocacy Program Associate. Plugging a quick event on May 13th, which is a Saturday right before Mother's Day, from 3 to 5 at Ritual Cafe in downtown Des Moines. Iowa IPL will be co-hosting the Love Your Mother events, which we will be putting on with some of our coalition partners, Moms Clean Air Force and Sierra Club Beyond Coal. There's going to be a musical performance, some speakers discussing our work with the Clean Up Mid-Am Coalition, and of course other entertainment and great food from Ritual Cafe. So everyone's welcome to come and stay for as long as you'd like until Ritual kicks us out, and we'd love to see you there. I'll go ahead and pass it to Elston.
Hi everybody, and thanks so much for the panelists for your incredible insights. My name is Elston Tortuga, and I'm the Iowa IPL Rural Faith Organizer based in Southwest Iowa. So we rooted down here in Southwest Iowa to have some conversations that Rob started talking about a little bit, called Faith Farms and Climate. And this summer we have gathered some themes from those conversations, and we'll be inviting you all to some public events. Kicking us off in June, on June 4th, we have a screening of the PFI production, Livestock on the Land, followed by a panelist moderated by Seth Watkins, And yeah, we're excited to just talk about the importance of livestock to rural communities and to ecosystems. So I'll drop a link and I hope we'll see you there.
Hey everyone, my name is Ren Matson and I am Iowa IPL's Program Associate for Communications and Development. From all of us here at Iowa IPL, we want to wish you a very happy and hopeful Earth Day tomorrow. There are still 9 days left of Earth Month for you to share what gives you hope for the future, as well as give a gift of $5.30, $53, or whatever you can give at this time to celebrate the 53rd annual Earth Day. We will drop that link in the chat. Your hope fuels our hope, and your gifts fuel all of the work we are able to accomplish in our state. Finally, a very special thank you to National Interfaith Power and Light. Every year they host Faith Climate Action Week, which we are in right now. Faith Climate Action Week is 10 days in April during Earth Month, when IPL congregations focus on how we can all take action to protect our climate. This year's theme is Living the Golden Rule, Just Transition to a Clean Energy Economy. We feature a different film every year that aligns with that theme. So we hope you enjoyed this year's film and feel inspired to take bold and just climate action. And that concludes our Earth Day Eve panel discussion. Be sure to check out the documentary series if you haven't already. The link to the films will be shared in the chat. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for attending tonight. We hope you will follow us on social media, as well as subscribe to our newsletter. We will drop the link to our website in the chat where you can find all of that information. We have lots of cool events coming up and climate action opportunities as well, so you won't want to miss those. So please keep in touch. Thanks again for attending. Thank you for your hope, your generosity, and your spirit.